Want to expand the reach of your content? Start a podcast. Feature industry experts on your show and leverage the influence and reach of your guests to grow your brand. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. Today is another episode in our Behind the Curtain series where we share some of the things that we're learning and how we're growing here as a team at Sweetfish. As usual in this series, I'm joined by my good buddy, James Carberry, founder and CEO of Sweetfish Media. James, what's up, man? How you doing today?
Oh, man, I am freaking pumped for this conversation. Just been fired up about the business as a whole more than I have. I mean, probably more the last month or two than I have, and honestly, the last couple of years. We just got a lot of stuff firing on all cylinders. We're a rock star team. Man, personal life is going really well. Friendships are going extremely well. Marriage is going extremely well. So, because I know I often say like, oh, doing great, excited for this episode, but I really am just doing so well.
Well, that's saying something because you do tend to get excited. You see the positive. You're the dreamer. You're the visionary around here, man. And so when you're like pausing and saying, no, like for real, guys, I take note. And actually, I kind of did a little faux pas there. We're actually going to be talking about how to turn prospective customers and your current customers, anybody who's in your network really, into friends very strategically in a B2B context. And one of the things we're going to be talking about later on is not to ask just kind of the standard questions, which I just did. How are you? We'll circle back to that in a bit. Yes. But we're going to be talking about 3 things you can do. And then the 4th is going to be conversational sparks. You and I have been thinking a lot about texting when it comes to potential customers, partners, our existing customers, and that's taking the communication off of email and Slack and LinkedIn to a channel that's more personal, man. Tell us a little bit about how we've been thinking about this.
So I want to go back one step before we start talking about texting. I want to really pound home why becoming friends with people that are your customers and potential customers is so freaking strategic and beneficial. One, it's way more freaking fun to go to work every day and work with people that are your friends. 2, it actually drives more retention and better results. So like when you're friends with somebody, like we get very candid feedback from our customers that you and I have become friends with about like how we can better our service, how we can deliver more value. And because we take their advice and implement it, we make our service better and it helps the rest of our business because we've got friends. When you're friends with somebody, you want them to win, you want them to succeed. So not only are they likely going to stick around, now obviously if your service sucks, if your product sucks, I don't care how many friends you are, if you're not delivering value with what you do, even your friends can't keep paying you, but they will give you candid feedback and the opportunity to, they'll give you a lot of grace in fixing the product or the bug or the, the lack of process.
I've seen it just in the past month over and over again.
Over and over and over again. So becoming, I don't think we use the term friendship enough. I've been doing a lot of podcast interviews for the book and I feel like I beat this over the head, this idea that like we should be saying the word friendship in business more. Dale Dupree literally built his entire freaking sales rebellion army on the back of this message. Like he sold copiers for over a decade. Who the hell wants to buy a freaking copier? You did the same thing. Dale did these super innovative things to create friendships with people in his community that were strategic. He wasn't just going out and becoming friends with anybody, but he knew if he could become friends with the guy that owns the coffee shop or the girl that runs the, the pet store in town, they needed 16 copiers and the veterinary office needed 24 copiers, or, whatever the case was. I don't even know if that's realistic, but
those are the wrong targets for selling copiers. I can tell you that just because I did it for 10 years. It's more
clearly,
the lawyer and the title
I know
office.
Nothing about.
Anyway, the point is still made.
I know nothing about selling copiers, but the idea that Dale literally sold, you and Dale both sold something, this commoditized thing that nobody wants to be sold copiers, but you guys were effective in doing it because you built friendships with people that could buy from you. And I think that applies to B2B SaaS companies. I think if your product is a $50,000, contract value, it is worth $25,000 contract value. Like, I just think it's worth going through the process of becoming friends. Like, I got a text message 3 nights ago from somebody who was on this podcast, like, I don't know, 3 years ago. I think he was episode like in the 300 or 400 range. He was on the show. I became friends with him, ended up going out and hanging out with him in San Francisco. We talk on the phone, I don't know, once every 5-6 months. So it's not like we're best friends, but we are friendly. We text back and forth. Like, I see something that reminds me of him, I text him. And he texted me the other day. He was like, dude, he's now at this $1 billion company, publicly traded company. And he's like, dude, we have a ton of budget to spend. We need to do a podcast. That would not have happened if he were not my friend. And he wants me to win. He wants us to win. And so many times we're just thinking about what are the activities we can do at scale. And in B2B, I just think you don't always need that. Like, there are things obviously that you need to scale. You need to figure out how to do it scale. But I think you can get a lot of wins by focusing on friendship. So I wanted to set the bar there and like, why are we talking about this idea of friendship in business? Because it's literally what we've built our entire business on the back of. Mm-hmm. We're a completely bootstrapped 7-figure profitable business because we care about friendship. And it didn't happen overnight. We've been around for half a decade, but it freaking works.
Yeah. What you said just there, I'm so glad you painted this picture. Dale's a great example. The one you just talked about in the friendship you've built, and you were just the master of this, man. I saw a tweet the other day that said I'm going to paraphrase because I can't even quote a tweet, but whatever. In a world of people looking for quick wins and growth hacks and immediate success, the ultimate growth hack is playing the long game. Yes. And I just thought that was so in line with everything you've talked about and just this conversation today.
Noah Kagan said, I heard on Noah Kagan's podcast, I think it was a few months ago, he said, the best growth hack is staying in business for 10 years. I just think that perfectly articulates exactly what you just paraphrased. Like, the best growth hack is patience and long-term and playing the long game. And there's nobody who is successful that will tell you that relationships did not help them get to where they are. And I don't think we talk enough about it. And so this episode, we're talking about, okay, how do we turn these people that we do business with or want to do business with, how do we turn them into friends? And I think we've got some really tangible ways to do that.
Yeah. So number one, as I kind of teed up a second ago, is one that we've been thinking about a lot. And you just mentioned in the example you shared, and that's texting. One of the things I've done recently is when people go to book through my HubSpot meeting link to be a guest on B2B Growth, some people use Calendly or HubSpot meetings or whatever the case might be. I added a field there to get their phone number. Now, not everybody gives their cell phone number. Sometimes it's an office line or direct line of some sort, but a lot of people, it's their cell phone number. So I've taken it to, at some point afterward, just text them something about their episode, or I thought of something that came out of the pre or post interview conversation. And what I found is just, it opens that door because we've had that first content collaboration. It doesn't feel like, oh, where am I getting this text from? And it gets, ignored. I get immediate responses.
You're not sending a 50% discount. Like that, when people think of text, like that's the kind of text message people in B2B think that they have, like that we're talking about. We're not talking about that. We're talking about like, what's the text that you would send your buddy that you're going to lunch with on Thursday?
Yeah. But how can you bake it into the process? Like, you can set a follow-up task in your sales engagement platform to send a text. And a lot of them have texting built right in. And so I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, texting is the next wave. It's kind of untapped. And they think of this, mass market blast
Texting at
just like
scale.
we've ruined email. Salespeople and marketers, we ruin everything, right? Let's not ruin it. Let's take advantage of the opportunity here in a way that's actually going to help us and build the relationships.
Yes. Oh my gosh, man. I cannot speak highly enough about texting. I think when you can shift, what are all the kids saying? When you can slide into their DMs, if you can slide into their text messages, man, you just talk to people differently. One, people pay attention to their texts and they don't.
Open rate is almost 100%.
Exactly.
If not 100%, right?
Exactly. Especially if you're doing it with context, you're not doing some mass message. You are literally saying, "Hey, Frank, thank you so much for the value bombs you dropped on the episode today. Stoked to stay connected with you." Like, you're not asking them for anything. You're just texting them and texting them right before the podcast interview. Like, "Hey, Frank, we still good to go?" Like, that's it. Like, it's actual human conversation, not things that your marketing team is going to automate for you. I think
what's interesting too here, man, is like I've seen a lot of posts lately about like people get too formal. Even experienced B2B salespeople, are guilty of getting at the keyboard and starting to use more formal language, even with an email with a potential customer or customer that they've interacted with. Not even talking about writing cold email, but something about holding that phone in your hand and texting kind of takes that away. It's kind of like when you start to like use Google Docs and voice type. Right. You're talking, so you're sounding like you talk as opposed to writing, and it creates that barrier. When you're texting, you're automatically this is more informal, it's more personal, and so it's going to actually help you communicate on a more human level with that other person on the other end too.
It's so funny you say that. Like, I write my best copy when I'm writing it in a note in my phone, or when I'm like sending an email to somebody from my phone, as opposed to when I'm by the computer. I am the biggest proponent for writing like you talk, but I still do it. Like when I'm writing, we're going through the
struggle is real
right now. Writing copy for the website, because I'm trying to have it on my big screen and I'm looking at this and so I'm at my computer writing copy and I'm like, but why? How did that just come off my fingers? Like, that's not how I talk. And you're spot on. I'd never really thought about it that way, but by moving to that, by actually sending the text message on your phone, because in the same thread, you're like, "Oh, I just texted my wife. I just texted you're in that mode as soon as you pick up your phone and open the text app.
Yeah.
And it makes so much more sense that you're going to write in a more human way.
Yeah. I mean, I'd kind of been thinking about this, and I was actually writing an email template for a sequence I'm going to send out to some current customers. And I typed "want to," and I was like, wait, I could just change that to "wanna," because I had been texting and I was like, no one's going to look at that and be like, "Oh, this is so informal." Are you kidding me? I mean, most of the people we work with, like, they're just going to know that you type that way. I mean, so many emails I get say, "Please excuse any typos and apologies for the brevity," sent from my iPhone or whatever. I think we can go too far to where it's just like, "Oh, this is unreadable."
Yeah.
But I think we're so far away, a nudge in that direction, we're not going to go too far most often.
I think you're exactly right. All right. So texting, obviously huge. What do we got next?
Second, content collaboration. So this is something that we've been trying to do more intentionally.
Yeah, your 5 things series, man.
Yeah, you have always encouraged me on this. Like, the second content collaboration you do with someone, whether that's a podcast or a virtual summit or an interview for your blog series or video series, whatever it is, it can even be shorter, but you just you start in and you might have something in your mind of like, oh, they were buying a house, or, oh, they were moving, or, they were celebrating their dog's birthday, like whatever. And you can start out that conversation with that. I think we're going to come back to that in a sec, talking about, conversational sparks. But what are your thoughts on second content collaborations?
I've said it for a while, and we haven't really operationalized it and started suggesting it to our customers until recently, because I've been a little bit fearful of are they going to want to do a second collaboration with somebody? Surprisingly, we haven't got any pushback to it because it makes sense. Common sense tells you that the more time you spend with somebody, the closer you're going to ultimately get with them. And if you do, we all meet people at conferences on a one-off basis. Like, you meet somebody one time, we would be shocked at how many. It'd be interesting if there's any data on this. Like, how many people over the course of your life do you meet one time? you don't remember those people. Like the number is too big for you to remember those people.
Yeah, that's really interesting, man.
So by taking and going to those people that you've already done the work of kind of vetting and making sure like, hey, is this a strategic relationship that I want to create? Before, obviously you don't know whether or not they have a need for what you do, but like, is this the type of person that I would want to connect with? And because they could potentially want what we have. You've already done that work. So why not go back to the well and nurture that relationship by doing another collaboration? Like things change, budgets change. After, maybe you had them on one time and 6 months later, you're like, hey, I want to go back. They might be at what I'm finding recently, man, like people don't stay at companies very long. Like their bad culture is rampant. And so people are bouncing from company to company. I was just talking to a friend of mine who's a customer that became a friend after he was a customer, and he left the company that he originally was working with us at, went to another company. Now he's at another company and he's a great dude, but most cultures suck. And you just like that short term of like, oh, well, if they weren't ready to buy the first time I talked to them, then good riddance on to the next one. And it's like, that's just stupid. Like
again, if you buy into the relationships, you have to have this mindset of the long game. I can think of another, customer of ours who left the company he was at where we had built a relationship and he became a customer, and then he left and now he's at another customer of ours. And so that relationship,
we brokered that relationship. And that to me, like, I don't know, when you're playing in the world of relationships, I was just on a call before we jumped on this, Logan. When you're playing in the world of building meaningful, genuine relationships with a specific type of person. So it's not disingenuine because you're targeted in who you want to be friends with. Like I could see how people could take it that way and like, oh, that, if you're even to use the word targeting, but it's just smart. Like I know that the more marketers, specifically VPs of marketing that I know and am friends with, the better our business is going to do. Even if they don't buy from us. Like my intent is not just to sell them something. And that's why I actually can become friends with them, because you and I's intent is very clear that if you don't buy from us, we still want to know you. Like we still want to add value in ways that we can add value. We still want to learn from you. Like, and when that is your intent, people actually want to work with you. They want to refer people to you.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
and
my
I think
company's not going to go for this, but you should talk to these guys.
Yeah. I think a way tactically, like if you are in sales and you're building relationships with content collaboration, the way that we talk about with content-based networking, let's say there is a point in the conversation, even like you just did a podcast episode or you just did something with someone or you just highlighted them and the conversation feels right to go ahead and ask like, hey, is there an opportunity to work together here? Don't hold that to the very end of that conversation. Just ask it when it feels right and make sure that you continue the conversation with still giving, because what that does is like flipping the email. If I send you an email out of the blue, James, and say like, hey, James, how's it going? I know Lisa's birthday was recently. How was that? I need to ask you this. Then all of that pleasantry feels like it was just a buildup for the ask.
Yes.
If you ask and you go back to giving, then you show very tactically that that's not the only thing that you're after. No matter the answer to that question, you're going back to the relationship. So sometimes that can be just kind of unconscious, but that has been a huge unlock for me, because even if your intentions are right, you can send the wrong message if you just kind of do it the wrong way.
So
and again, you can be strategic, you can be targeted, and you can still be genuine, but you've got to be careful that you're still coming off that way, because the perception is what matters, not necessarily the intent. But the more that you actually believe it, the more the intent will shine through. So that's my soapbox there, man.
No, man, you're so right. And I think that little tactic could literally, that alone, like, hey, like bring it up when it feels natural, but make sure that that's not how you're closing. Like you're always closing with, how can I help this person? One idea that just popped in my head that we should even think about doing at Sweetfish, like if you just have it baked into your plan that marketing is constantly working every quarter on a big like roundup piece of content. I don't care if it's an ebook, I don't care if it's a virtual summit, I don't care if it's just a massive blog post where you're trying to rank for a competitive keyword. If you have something like big every quarter that that you come up with what that thing is based on the fact that the people that you're having on your podcast or whatever you're initial content collaboration mechanism is, that they can also contribute to that thing. And it can be 4 monster blog posts or an ebook, a virtual summit, a blog post, and a video series. Having those things already baked in and knowing this is what we're working on, that way you can literally expedite this process. And at the end of your podcast interview or whatever the tip of the spear is for you, when you're talking to them for that first collaboration, saying like, hey, we're also working on this other thing. And I think you'd be able to add a lot of value to that too, based on the conversation we had. Now, like, that's tough. If their content wasn't actually that good, then I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to say that, I just want people to be genuine and authentic, and I don't want you lying to people. But having something like that, like a stable, like project that, this is something we're working on in Q1. This is the content project in Q2, in addition to the podcast for us, for B2B growth. I just think that would be ninja. Like, you've done it with the 5 Things series here, because that's an ongoing series. And so you getting people on B2B growth and then saying, and for the people that you really connect with and think, man, we could really work well with these folks, hey, come back on the 5 Things series. That's a second opportunity for you to build relationship. And I bet you can even speak to the fact that, like, those people that you've talked to the second time, it's different. Like, you have a different level of connection with them than you did just having one conversation with them.
Yeah. And it's been cool. I mean, I always talk about this double-edged sword of content-based networking is you get the relationships and you get the content that you're trying to create anyway. Like, the 5 Things series, I've gotten feedback from folks like, we're talking marketing, strategy, and tactics, and a little bit of sales every day on B2B growth. And then we just pause and say, let's do some 5 to 10 minute episodes
and
talk about like,
Peloton.
What's your favorite app? Like, how do you use your Peloton? What's key for your to-do list? And like, people have been sharing those episodes more. And so it's not just like this, sneaky thing to try and get people back on the show. I'm doing it in a way that is still creating content that, one, is fun to create and it's engaging people. So, you've got to think about, how does it fit for both? And I think that's where larger teams really need to look at, how can sales and marketing sit down together and figure out, how do we build these relationships and how do we create interesting content? But, I just think the world's your oyster when you got bigger teams. I just think how much we're doing with a small team that bigger teams could be doing so much more.
Oh my gosh. Like the 5 Things, like, I legitimately get giddy every Saturday morning whenever I see that 5 Things.
You texted me when one didn't drop on time.
Yeah. I was like, where's the 5 Things today? Like, I don't listen to every B2B growth interview. Like, I'd be lying if I told you I like to listen to every single one of our interviews. I don't. Some of them seem interesting to me and I listen, and others I don't. But the 5 Things, like, it's different. And I listen to it every single Saturday because I know it's different and it's just a different style. And so I think there are tons of opportunities if you start thinking creatively about how to do this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So let's round out, because we like to do lists here. So we got 1, thinking about texting and building relationships. 2, a second, content collaboration. And 3, I think we want to lump these 2 ideas together, especially because, with everything that's going on right now, there are events being canceled. People are rethinking their event strategy. But third for us has always been in-person events coupled with some sort of digital community. We've tried and experimented with Slack channels. I've seen some Facebook other folks doing something like that, Facebook groups, which we've neglected for a long time, unfortunately. But talk about this last point of building friendships, James, between in-person and online communities and how you can foster those.
Yeah. So I think this is probably our biggest opportunity for growth at Sweetfish. This is something we don't do well. We do it in spurts, in large part because my personality is a lot in spurts, until we have enough bandwidth to have somebody on the team that can run and make my spurt a sustaining effort. But like 2 years ago, I went and I think I did like 12 different B2B growth dinners in different cities. And by bringing people together over a meal, it just expedites friendship like you would not believe. We've tried doing this digitally, and honestly, we just sucked at it. We didn't have the horsepower behind it. We didn't have the bandwidth on our team to really like spark interesting conversations on a regular basis, either in Slack or in Facebook. Again, very short spurts, and we just haven't maintained those. At some point, on our audience growth team, I hope to bring on somebody that just focuses on community for all the different shows, B2B growth, B2B sales, crafting culture, manufacturing show, all these shows we're building. I want to have somebody that's focused on community for those shows. We're just not at the point in the business where we can justify having somebody in that role yet. But I do think if you do have if you do have some budget, if you've got some venture money, like if you've got budget to do it, investing in building community in person and digitally, I think is a really smart way to go. When you're connecting we've done this at a micro scale, like doing a customer event. That's how we connected one of our old customers to another customer. And now that guy works at this other company because of ultimately meeting there. Who knows if that, it might have happened apart from that connection, but that's really the first time they met. And so being able to do that kind of stuff and broker those kind of connections makes you someone that a lot of people like.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple of tactical things to throw out. From one of those lunches, I know, J.K. Sparks at BombBomb recently told me I didn't even really realize the impact of that B2B growth lunch that we did. It was shortly before that, before we started working with BombBomb. We had done content collaboration with Ethan over there tons and tons of times. But I know he mentioned like that value of like, oh, hey, I got invited to this. And there were some people with more experience and a little bit more seniority in their marketing department. And he was excited about it. And, we didn't even really see the impact and the value that he felt he got out of that small in-person lunch that was like 6 people, maybe a little bit more, but that's including you and me. And so you don't know what that's going to do. Also, if you're going to start a Slack channel, one of the things we started to do, I think you can do if you have someone dedicated to it, like you were saying, is come up with questions of the day or questions of the week that you can ask to facilitate conversation. That part has been a big way that we've driven engagement within our culture on a fully distributed team here at Sweetfish. So think about that. Another way, we've been big proponents of building LinkedIn engagement groups to help people get more organic reach on their content. I've also seen, I'm part of a LinkedIn engagement group with Dale Dupree, and it's actually split into 2, one for posts and one for chat, because so many people, like-minded people, are just like chatting back and forth. And so think about that too. We've been big proponents of building an engagement group so that you can but you can leverage, your team to get early engagement on your posts and further organic reach. But it can also bring together those people that you want to build relationships with, help them see other content that they would like to see, and you can build relationships that way. So those are a couple of tactical things. We talked about texting, we talked about second content collaborations, and we talked about community. I wanted to get into conversational sparks, but I think we should do that in a separate episode, kind of going deeper on how do you start relationships, how do you go deeper, and this idea of conversational sparks from a book you and I are both reading, Captivate, from Vanessa Van Edwards, who was on the Customer Experience podcast recently, is a way to go deeper. So we'll come back to that in a follow-up episode here in the Behind the Curtain series. James, as always, man, thank you so much for riffing with me. It's always fun. We do it every day, but we don't record it every day. We got to record these more often. If people aren't connected with you, what's the easiest way?
Yeah. So James at sweetfishmedia.com is my email, LinkedIn, James Carberry. But we're hiring, we're growing, and we're looking for people that own the result. We're looking for people that are proactive. We're looking for people that are hungry, and we're looking for people that are really in it and are committed, and that type of personality. So whether you're looking or somebody that's looking, some different roles that we're looking for. We've got, we're a media company, so writers and video folks and producers. And I'm really just trying to spin. That's where a lot of my brain is right now, is trying to think, how can we build a war chest of incredible people as we need certain roles? So shoot myself or Ryan on our team, Ryan at sweetfishmedia.com. He's our director of culture and people ops. We'd love to connect with you. We might not have a role for you right now, but we are hiring for some stuff immediately. So would love for anybody to, I talked earlier in this episode about how most cultures suck. Very, very fortunate that ours doesn't. We have all the time hearing from our team how much they love working here. So if you know anybody that's looking, if you're looking yourself, we're in a booming industry right now. Everybody knows podcasts are doing nothing but going up and to the right. And we're really at the epicenter of it in the B2B world. And so super exciting. So we don't talk about that much here, but yet.
I mean, I think
wanted
it's
to throw that
appropriate
out.
though, especially if you like these episodes where we're going behind the curtain and you like what we're doing and how we're doing it, because we're trying to give that peek so that you can learn. But if it, makes sense, we would love to hear from you. So I love that call out, man. We don't necessarily do that a lot as much as we have been talking about, what's going on behind the curtain, so to speak, here at Sweetfish. So that's a good call out. If anybody listening to this isn't connected with me, LinkedIn is the best way. Logan Lyles, Lyles. That's not Miles, as I get every customer service call that I'm on, or people calling me Lyle as my first name. Anyway, I won't go off on that. Connect with James and I. You can email me as well, Logan@sweetfishmedia.com. As always, thank you so much for listening.
I hate it when podcasts incessantly ask their listeners for reviews, but I get why they do it, because reviews are enormously helpful when you're trying to grow a podcast audience. So here's what we decided to do. If you leave a review for B2B Growth in Apple Podcasts and email me a screenshot of the review to james@sweetfishmedia.com, I'll send you a signed copy of my new book, Content-Based Networking, How to Instantly Connect with Anyone You Want to Know. We get a review, you get a free book. We both win.